They were created by serendipity in the kitchen of the acclaimed chef Auguste Escoffier in the 1920s. They are named after their striking resemblance to the famous mushroom used in luxurious French and Italian dishes. Today, the variety of flavors is enormous, and they are sold almost everywhere in the world. Hello, I'm Carlos Salgado, and today we'll be preparing the incredible addictive chocolate truffles. Chocolate truffles offer a wide variety of combinations with chocolate, nuts, liquors or essences. Today we'll be making rum truffles, peanut truffles, truffles with Nutella, coconut, pistachio, caramel, and a very special one that has been added to the list, which is unique and original in its home country, the famous Brigadeiro from Brazil. All these recipes have a fundamental principle: emulsion. The foundation of every chocolate truffle is the ganache, which must be shiny, smooth, and free from air bubbles. This is where the right emulsion process comes into play. Then it's all about playing with temperatures and finishing with an impeccable decoration. Chocolate truffles have a limited shelf life. On average, they can be refrigerated for 5 to 7 days. When it's time to enjoy them, it's best to let them rest at room temperature for at least 10 minutes. If you are making rum truffles for selling purposes, they can be kept frozen for up to 1 year or even longer. Store them without any decorations. Simply let them defrost, preferably in the refrigerator, before decorating. Now let's begin our journey into the wonderful world of chocolate truffles. If you find this video helpful, please remember to like and share. Let's start with the classic rum truffles. Originally, they are made with cognac or brandy. Here I'll be using one of the finest rums in the world, Venezuelan Santa Teresa Gran Reserva Rum. You will need 200 grams of dark chocolate with a cocoa percentage equal to or greater than 55%, 150 grams of heavy cream, 25 grams of softened butter or butter at room temperature, 2 tablespoons of rum. For the finishing touches, you will need around 100 grams of melted dark chocolate and about 70 grams of cocoa powder. Begin by melting the chocolate either in a double boiler or in the microwave. Meanwhile, heat the heavy cream. Heat it in a covered saucepan to prevent excessive moisture loss. Allow it to come to a brief boil for a few seconds. Immediately, pour the cream over the chocolate. Now emulsify. You can use an immersion blender or a whisk. For smaller quantities like this, it's better to use a whisk. For larger quantities, an immersion blender will be more effective. In both cases, avoid incorporating air into the mixture. That's why we should not leave the whisk or the immersion blender while emulsifying. Start with small movements until a shiny center appears. Then, gradually, expand the movements until you obtain a smooth mixture. Now we need to use a thermometer. Add the softened butter when the ganache reaches a temperature between 40 and 45 degrees Celsius or between 100 and 115 Fahrenheit. Now emulsify. Add the rum and emulsify once more. Cover the ganache with plastic wrap, ensuring it touches the surface, and refrigerate for 1 hour. Meanwhile, prepare a tray with parchment paper and place it in the refrigerator. Once you achieve the ideal consistency, using a small ice cream scoop equivalent to a tablespoon and a half, scoop small balls onto a tray lined with parchment paper. If it's still too liquid, refrigerate it again. It should have a creamy and quite thick consistency to form the spheres. Then refrigerate the tray for 1 hour. Prepare a container with melted chocolate, ensuring it's not heated above 35 degrees Celsius or 95 Fahrenheit, and a small tray with cocoa powder. Remove the truffles from the refrigerator and, wearing gloves, refine their shape. Next, dip them in the melted chocolate and place it on a tray lined with parchment paper. Wait for the chocolate coating to crystallize. Then, roll them in cocoa powder. If you plan to store them in a container, leave them coated in cocoa powder. If you are placing them in individual wrappers or presentation boxes, remove the excess cocoa powder. And there you have the classic rum truffles. Remember, you can also use cognac or brandy. Now let's move on to the Nutella truffles. Here's what you'll need: 150 grams of dark chocolate with a cocoa percentage equal to or greater than 55%, 50 grams of Nutella, 150 grams of heavy cream, 20 grams of softened butter or at room temperature, and around 150 grams of previously toasted and chopped hazelnuts. Follow the same procedure as we did with the rum truffles. After melting the chocolate a bit, add the Nutella and then the hot heavy cream. Next, continue with the emulsion phase, followed by adding the butter and allowing the ganache to crystallize. Once the ganache reaches the right consistency, shape it into spheres and refrigerate them for 1 hour. Prepare a tray or container with the chopped hazelnuts. Refine the truffles and coat them with the hazelnut pieces. Lastly, place them in these small paper wrappers. And there you have some delicious Nutella truffles. Now let's move on to the coconut truffles. For these truffles, you'll need 300 grams of white chocolate, 100 grams of heavy cream, 30 grams of softened butter at room temperature, 1 tablespoon of coconut essence, and 150 grams of shredded coconut. Melt the chocolate a bit, either in the microwave or in a double boiler. Heat the heavy cream in a covered saucepan. Add the cream to the chocolate and emulsify. When the ganache reaches a temperature between 40 and 45 degrees Celsius or between 100 and 115 Fahrenheit, add the softened butter. Emulsify. Add the coconut essence and emulsify once more. Refrigerate for at least 1 hour. Once it has the ideal consistency, form the spheres and refrigerate them for 1 hour. Then smooth them with the palms of your hands and coat them with the shredded coconut. Place them in these presentation wrappers, and there you have some delicious coconut truffles. Now we move on to the peanut truffles. For this, you'll need 200 grams of dark chocolate with a cocoa percentage equal to or greater than 55%, 110 grams of peanut butter, 40 grams of coconut oil, 10 grams of honey, and 1 tablespoon of vanilla extract. Melt the chocolate. Add the warm coconut oil, peanut butter, honey, and vanilla. Emulsify everything until obtain a smooth and shiny ganache. Refrigerate for at least 1 hour. Once it reaches the ideal consistency, shape it into spheres and refrigerate them. Then smooth them with the palms of your hands and freeze them for at least 1 hour. Next, make a crunchy peanut coating using 200 grams of milk chocolate, 60 grams of vegetable oil, and 60 grams of previously toasted and chopped peanuts. Melt the chocolate in a double boiler or in the microwave. Then add the oil and emulsify well with a spatula. Finally, add the peanuts. Set it aside. Use this glaze at 35 degrees Celsius or 95 Fahrenheit. Remove the spheres from the freezer and carefully glaze the truffles using toothpicks until the coating crystallizes. Place them on a tray lined with parchment paper. If you have gold leaf, you can decorate the part where the toothpick was inserted. You can also delicately apply a bit of glaze and sprinkle some chopped peanuts. Place these truffles in the paper wrappers, and there you have some delicious peanut truffles. Now let's move on to a simple yet delicious treat, pistachio truffles. For this recipe you'll need 260 grams of dark chocolate with a cocoa percentage equal to or greater than 55%, 125 grams of heavy cream, 160 grams of natural pistachios, and half a teaspoon of salt. Grind the pistachios until you obtain a powder or flour. Melt the chocolate in the microwave or in a double boiler. Boil the heavy cream in a covered saucepan. Add the cream and salt to the chocolate and emulsify. Lastly, add 80 grams of pistachio flour. Allow it to crystallize in the refrigerator for at least 1 hour. Shape it into spheres, refrigerate them, and then smooth them with the palms of your hands. Finally, coat the spheres with the remaining pistachio flour. Place them in the paper wrappers. And there you have some delicious pistachio truffles. Next, let's move on to caramel truffles. For this recipe you'll need 60 grams of powdered sugar, 200 grams of heavy cream, 35 grams of salted butter at room temperature, 150 grams of dark chocolate with a cocoa percentage equal to or greater than 55%, and 250 grams of milk chocolate. For the glaze, you'll need 200 grams of dark chocolate and 50 grams of milk chocolate. Melt both chocolates a bit in the microwave or in a double boiler. Boil the heavy cream in a covered saucepan and set it aside. Place the sugar in another saucepan and heat it over medium heat until it turns into an amber colored caramel. Immediately and carefully add the butter. You'll notice a rapid and vigorous boiling. Then add the hot cream and emulsify. Remove from the heat, add this mixture to the chocolate and emulsify. Refrigerate the ganache for at least 1 hour. Once it reaches the ideal consistency, shape it into spheres. Refrigerating again and smoothen with the palms of your hands. Freeze them for at least 1 hour. Now let's make the glaze. Melt the dark chocolate and the milk chocolate. Let them rest until they reach a temperature of around 31 to 35 degrees Celsius or 81 to 95 Fahrenheit. Place the milk chocolate in a cone made of parchment paper. Using toothpicks, cover the truffles with the glaze and place them on a tray lined with parchment paper. Once the chocolate has crystallized, coat the tip of the cone and quickly create small lines on the top of the truffles. Wait for it to crystallize and place the truffles in the paper wrappers. And there you have some exquisite caramel truffles. And we finish with the famous Brigadeiros. For this you'll need 395 grams of condensed milk, 15 grams of butter, 60 grams of cocoa powder, and 100 grams of chocolate sprinkles. In a saucepan, add the butter and condensed milk. Combine the ingredients and add the cocoa powder. Stir constantly with a spatula over medium heat until you obtain a texture similar to ganache. Remove from heat and transfer the mixture to a bowl and cover with plastic wrap in contact with the mixture. Refrigerate for at least 1 hour. Shape the mixture into spheres. Perfect their shape with the palms of your hands and cover them with the chocolate sprinkles. Place them in paper wrappers, and there you have the classic and delicious Brigadeiros. And that completes this luxurious selection of truffles. You can choose to make just the ones you like the most, or could create your own combinations. Chocolate truffles have become a luxurious sweet treat that can accompany a good tea or coffee, a glass of champagne, or serve as a perfect ending to an elegant dinner. Be bold and prepare them at home. And with that, we conclude another pastry lesson. Thank you for joining me and see you soon.